Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hi everyone. Welcome to episode 326 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is Jackson. You know, when we named this podcast The Extra Mile, I didn't necessarily think it would mean a reflection of the way the bar exam season is going, but oh my gosh, here we are in the extra mile plus some as we continue to march on towards the September 30th exams, the October 5th and 6th exams, and the October 13th exam in Florida, just to wrap up what is typically called the July 2020 season. And then before we know it, we'll be getting results and into 2021. So what a strange time this has been. In any event, we are glad you have found us and that you're with us today. These podcast episodes are presented in both audio and video format. If you'd like to watch today's episode, you can jump on celebrationbarreview.com/326. That's the episode number. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, radio.com, Spotify, most places where podcasts are available and syndicated. So whatever works for you, that's great. We're glad that you have found us and that you're with us. In today's episode, my co-host Megan and I will be talking about what's been happening in the bar exam. The big news this week is probably still cycling around ExamSoft and the difficulties that they're having and the problems that's presenting specifically with the multi-state performance test, with the performance test in California, and taking that test online. We titled this week's episode Scratch That because suddenly it looks like you're going to be able to use scratch paper in some jurisdictions for the performance tests. We're going to take a little bit of credit for making that happen. And beyond that, the other thing that I think people have to scratch is their original assumptions about what was going to happen with results from July 2020. We've gotten the first group of results out from exams that were actually given in the month of July, and they are across the board massive increases in pass rates against the predictions of most of the typical traditional pundits in our field. I will take credit for being the lone voice that said pass rates were going to go up in this season, and sure enough, they did. So we're going to break that down for you, show you what's been going on there. Now, before we get into the discussion with Megan, I want to just remind all of you that we do have a free special training webinar. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowds and the Fear. We started presenting this webinar back when COVID-19 began in March, and my theory of the case back then was that pass rates would indeed go up in this season, and as you'll see today, they have. We've continued to update the webinar each week with new information, and at the end of every session, I do a live Q&A so I can answer your questions about your specific circumstance or your jurisdiction or what you have on your mind. Now, this webinar is completely free. It lasts an hour, and you do need to register. And to do that, you can go to the show notes in either the video or the audio pages for this podcast, or you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/now and register, and then we'll see you on Sunday evening for this special free training webinar. Hope you don't miss it. It's really been a valuable session. We continue to keep it updated on all the latest information. So if you're still trying to figure out what to do in 2021, I think this is a great place to start. All right, well, I want to jump into our discussion about this week. It was an interesting week, as so many have been, and certainly highlighted by the news of new pass rates and results, but also a lot of changes still continuing to occur as the bar exam jurisdictions prepare for the upcoming September and October exams. So let's jump into it. Well, hey, everybody, welcome. The world is crazy, but we're here. Hi, Megan.
We are. Hi, how are you?
Good, good. We're growing closer, obviously, to the series of exams now. We've finished September 9th. We're now looking at September 30th, which is a very small number of jurisdictions. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah. I would imagine very few of you are taking the September 30th. It's just a very small pool, even smaller than the September 9th and 10th pool.
Right. And then we have the October 5th and 6th and 7th in some jurisdictions, Plan B, which has got a lot of folks, including California, New York, a lot of UBE states. And then a week later, we have the Florida exam, one-day test on October 13th. So there's a lot going on. And then results are actually now starting to come out from the July 2020 bar exams. We're going to talk about that a little bit today as well. So there is a lot going on. And of course, we've got a lot of you probably on this call that are going to be taking the exam in 2021. So you should be underway and studying now as well. And, we have certainly seen a lot of movement back and forth, people delaying, deferring, trying to make decisions about what to do. I think this is all as normal as it can be given the abnormality of the situation. Does it feel that way to you?
Yeah, I feel like at this point, people are mostly settled a bit on which exam they're going to be taking. Yeah. Definitely make sure if you are not settled, that's something you want to probably figure out as soon as possible at this point. If you are still registered for October 5th and 6th, but unsure if you're going to take that one, I think you need to probably make that choice within the next couple of days and really be settled on that. But I think most of you are pretty settled on whether you're doing October exam or the February 2021 exam.
Yeah, let me talk about folks sitting for that October 5th and 6th exam. Given where we are right now, you should be almost done with your substantive study. I would say another 10 days or so of substantive study and then into review. Many of you are already in the review session or review period already, and that's fine. I think some of you that got a later start will run closer to the actual exam date, but I would try to give yourselves at least a week for review prior to the exam date itself. So I've had some conversations with students this week who probably will need to defer on the October exam simply because they're not far enough along. It's been hard, I think, for a lot of people to motivate themselves to do the studying, right? Because it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I just want to say, for those of you that are doing that, don't beat yourselves up. We are all doing the best we can do, right? And I think if you're feeling that sort of, guilt over not taking the exam, don't do that to yourself. That's not a helpful process. We're not deferral shaming here. Okay? So there you go. All right. Well, with those thoughts in mind, Megan, you want to catch us up on what's going on in the bar exam world as we know it today?
Yeah, so some good news came out from the NCBE this week. So Jackson, I know you had been emailing with our contact who we work with at the National Conference of Bar Examiners and asking specifically about the MPT and what was going to happen and sort of the unfairness, honestly, of the test, and that people were unable to highlight within it. Obviously, the note-taking capability is just very difficult. And pushing for, hey, what is the NCBE going to do to help students on this part of the exam? Because it's really the most stressful, we're finding, for students, because it's so different in the online version than it is in the real paper packet version of the MPT. So I first want to say, before I give the sort of change that happened before that, what we heard from the woman who we work with is they did confirm that ExamSoft is the only approved vendor for all jurisdictions right now. So everyone who's doing these online exams, including Florida the next week, is doing ExamSoft. And currently their software will allow highlighting within the MEE, but not the MPT, which is such a bummer because so few people actually will highlight in the MEE section. Yeah. But they said it's because the file size is so big on the MPT. So this is, again, the problems that people had of feeling like, is the software really ready for this kind of an exam? So on this question, no. So they said, we are aware this is an issue because highlighting within the MPT is important. We've requested that a fix be explored, but one has not been deployed as of yet. So that was, a few days before the statement came out from the NCBE. Basically, we assume ExamSoft has not been able to figure out how to allow highlighting in the MPT, because instead of doing that, the NCBE allowed jurisdictions to make the decision to allow for scratch paper. So what that means is, so it sounds like a blanket statement, like scratch paper is allowed in the MPT. That's not what it means. It means the NCBE, who owns the MPT, they own it, they own those questions. They are saying it's not going to be an infringement of our licensing or copyright for examinees to use scratch paper. The concern has always been that if you use scratch paper, you could walk out of the exam, you could copy down the question and leave the exam with it. So that's that. And then they're leaving it up to the individual jurisdictions to decide whether or not they want to allow the scratch paper on the MPT. So if that makes sense, it's almost like the NCBE has said, step 1, we'll allow it. Step 2, though, is a required step, which is your jurisdiction has to also allow it. So if your jurisdiction does not, it doesn't matter that the NCBE allows it. Your jurisdiction has to allow it as well.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to delve in a little bit deeper here, but a couple comments so you can catch your breath. I had the very clear impression from my correspondence with the NCBE that they weren't truly aware of the depth of the problem. As many of you know, or you should all know, I prepared a video last week, I think it was, on how to prepare and write an MPT online. And Megan and I went back and forth, I don't know how many times, on that video. It was one of the harder lectures I've done in years and years and years. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was a struggle to write the MPT and to prepare it and do the things we wanted to do online. And I'm good at it. And it was hard for me. And then Megan went back and said, well, what about this? And how do you do this? And you can explain that. And so as we kept working with it, it just became clearer and clearer that this was going to be incredibly challenging. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is it's challenging for everyone. It lowers the threshold, I think, for everyone. I think the word count will go down for everyone. I think the expectation of what kind of product is going to be produced will be much reduced from a typical performance test, and this would be true in California as well. But when we talked to the NCBE, I had the real impression in my correspondence that they were kind of blissfully not paying much attention. They knew it was a problem, but and then sort of magically, after I poked them a few times about it, sort of relentlessly, then they suddenly out of nowhere basically said, oh yeah, well, we here's this solution that we've got, which may have been in part a response to our questions. Maybe other people are asking the same questions. It's not a perfect fix by any means. And I want to say that for those of you taking a performance test, California or the national conference, because California is going to let you use paper copy or paper virtual, real
scrap paper.
Scrap paper, that's the word, scrap paper. Those of you that are in scrap paper states should practice over the next few weeks both ways, both with online and scrap paper. There may be some advantages to putting parts of your answer on scrap paper or taking your notes on scrap paper. I think for some of you, it will depend on whether or not you are fast typists or not. If you're not a particularly fast typist, the scrap paper may be an advantage. If you're a really fast typist, though, you may be able to type faster in the virtual scrap paper and just copy that into your answer. And that's the situation that we've described in the video. So that's the context that I see for this. You want to talk about where we are with different states and what's going on with that?
Yeah. So as of and I concede that this stuff changes constantly, but as of the last time that I have been able to, look through and see who's allowing it and who's not. So I should say California allows scratch paper already because they don't do the MPT. So California writes their own performance test, which means they didn't need the NCBE's permission to allow scratch paper. So that's really important. Like if you're in California, this actually doesn't change anything for you because you don't take the multi-state performance test. Even though it's still called a performance test, it's written by California. It's not written by the NCBE. So it's like a totally different thing. So California still, you're fine. Nothing has changed for you. DC has said they'll allow 5 pages. And New York is going to allow it. Georgia, Illinois, Ohio, and New Hampshire. We anticipate more jurisdictions allowing it. Like I said, there's a chance, and even while we're talking now, things might come through of, hey, more jurisdictions have said it's okay. I might have missed something, so I do apologize. There's a lot to keep track of, but those seem to be, and especially for our students' purposes, I know we've got a lot of DC, New York, Georgia, Illinois. So that's good to know. I think it's good news. Like you said, Jackson, I would suggest to people that they practice both ways and see what feels more comfortable for them. I'm a fast typist, but I really like on the scratch paper, you have the ability to write in different spots. So you can sort of group things together visually. That's helpful for me that you can't do on a typed document where you're just sort of linearly going down. So if that's you, if you're more visual, the scratch paper might be really helpful for you. If you like the sort of linear style of just typing it up and here's, going down in that fashion, that's great. Do not feel like because there's a scratch paper option that you have to use it. It's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination. You're fine. If you feel more comfortable just typing your notes, that's great. Go with that. Don't force yourself to adapt unnecessarily. Okay. So I just really want that to be clear. Use a hybrid, use just the online notes, use just the scratch paper, whatever feels the most comfortable for you. You should be practicing different ways and get a feel for yourself. That's a question that only you can answer. All right, so moving on, we've got some good news, I think. I want to talk about these results that have started coming in from the July in-person exams. So I know we talked a little bit, last week we had just 2 jurisdictions that had released their results, and we talked a little bit about that. Man, this trend is holding strong of very large increases in pass rates. I mean, this is incredible. So I'm going to go through the different jurisdictions so you guys can get a feel for it. And I want to point out, this is every jurisdiction that's released results so far from the July exam. So I'm not cherry picking. This is not like I'm not leaving anybody out. These are all of the results so far. So North Carolina went from 73% pass rate to 83%. Iowa, 80 to 83. Nebraska, 79 to 89. 79 to 89. North Dakota, 73 to 76. Oklahoma, 77 to 80. Washington, 68 to 86. 68 to 86, you guys. West Virginia, 67 to 77%. Wisconsin, 64 to 69. And Wyoming, 73 to 85%. This is like, I mean, it's incredible. We do not see swings like this. I don't think personally it can be just attributed to, you'll kind of see stuff hanging out around there of, oh, well, it's because people have so much extra time on their hands and they can study more and they're doing better. I don't know who these magical people are who have a lot more time on their hands. Certainly not anybody who has jobs that they're trying to do remotely, children that they're trying to educate remotely, right? So, relatives or family members that they're trying to take care of who are sick. So yeah, Jackson, what do you think is going on with these score increases?
Well, I'm going to start by patting myself on the back. In March, I started a webinar called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. And the theory of the case that I made then was scores would go up, that grading would be more generous, that there would be, even with the mix of people taking the exam, that we would see fewer people in the exam, and that would result in higher scores. And I got a lot of pushback. I mean, I got a lot of people who privately contacted me. I had people on social media who said, that's just nonsense. Of course, that isn't going to happen. Scores are going to go down. Here's all the reasons scores are going to go down. And I continued to stand by the idea that scores would go up. Well, it turns out, I was right. The scores did go up, and it looks like they're going up consistently and by a lot. I mean, as you said, Megan, normally we'll see a 2 or 3 point swing and feel good about that. When we talk about 10-point swings, that's unprecedented.
Right. And more, in several jurisdictions, and some more than 10 points.
Yeah. That's hard to explain. Something clearly was different. Now, I think that speaks well to the idea that with fewer people taking the test, you have more room for examiners to give those seats and to do the grading and for it to go well. And the examiners, I think, had more, I don't know what the right word, empathy, compassion, equity. I don't know what it is, but there's clearly a difference. So that part is really, really good. I also think that as we look into the October 5th and 6th exams, Florida is always a different animal. I'm not, I don't know what we're going to do in Florida, but in October 5th and 6th, I think we'll see again a jump in pass rates. And certainly in California, by lowering the score by 50 points, we're going to see a jump. And I'm hopeful that the scoring will be better than or the grading will be more equitable than it's been in years past. So this is a good sign and a good trend. I think it has good implications for 2021. So I continue to believe that this is the best time to be taking the bar exam. Because these numbers from July jumped so dramatically, my advice to people who were on the fence about taking the October exam, the plan B was, if you can do it, take the October exam. When we see this kind of surge, I'd like you to be part of the surge if you can, rather than sitting it out. I do think we'll see a spillover into 2021, at least the I don't know what we're calling it, February 2021. I don't believe it's going to happen that way, but I think we'll see a spillover into that exam. But this is pretty remarkable sets of numbers, and I'm certainly pleased with how people are doing there and the results we're getting. But I think it's also important to note there are dramatically fewer takers in the July 2020 exam than we would have had. I mean, even in those states, most every state had far fewer takers, didn't they, than historically.
Yeah, so some were fairly close, but fewer. But what was interesting is a lot of them, there were more, which again, you talked about, you thought would be the case back in March and April. There were more repeat takers.
Yeah.
So the number of first-time takers went down and the number of repeat takers went up, which is part of also the why there were many naysayers saying, no, the exam rates are going to plummet because it's going to be more repeat takers, and yet the repeat takers went up and the pass rates went up. So yeah, it's
funny how that worked, huh? Yeah, I mean, all those folks, and I'm talking to you, New York bar examiners, oh, repeat bar takers, they're lesser than, and they can't do it, and they're not capable. Really? Maybe you ought to check with Washington State. I think that this is upending a lot of our sort of well-worn tropes about what is and isn't and what works and what doesn't work. I think the other thing we should keep in mind is that some of these jurisdictions were open book exams. And as we see the results coming out of the open book exams, we are going to see jumps. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And so I think the open book exam, we've said it before, I think that genie's out of the bottle, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to put it back.
Yeah, there are definitely going to be some long-term implications for the bar. That is for sure. Okay, we've got a few questions. First, I want to talk in the chat box. Several people have been talking about trying the mock exam and different issues with it. So different problems with the functionality, problems with the laptop just sort of panicking and not working. So I think the overall thing that I want to say with this is we can't answer any specific questions about why did ExamSoft not work on my computer, or what does this, do, or why can't I move this or that? But what we can say for sure is you need to do the mock. If you have the ability to do it, you need to do it. You need to learn as much as you can about how the software program works and get as comfortable with that as you possibly can now. Don't wait. Do not wait and do it. Don't wait till the last minute to do it. If it's open now in your jurisdiction, you should get on it. You should download it to your computer, the laptop that you're going to use. You should work with it and get comfortable with it. You want to fix these problems today. If it's not working in your web browser, you need to try 3 other web browsers until you find one that works best for you. You need to get comfortable with how it's going to function. Don't leave it until the week of the exam. Just do not do that, because it's not going to end well for you. And yeah, Nancy just said ExamSoft is not responsive. I've been seeing that too a lot online, that basically the customer support is so inundated and they're not putting you in a queue and they're not calling back and they're not. So that's, again, obviously we cannot do anything about that. All I can say to you is you need to start getting in touch with them, trying to get in touch with them today. Start trying to problem solve today. I will say, if you're on Twitter, or you can even just go on Twitter, you just make a whatever account and go and look at Bar Exam Tracker. That's the username, and it is an anonymous. It's someone who is taking the bar exam for the first time this cycle, and he or she has just been compiling great, I mean, they take in like, here's what's going on, here's what's happening, sort of a news resource for exam takers. I think it's really helpful. So if you want to go and look there and see, you can see kind of what they'll put, what other people are doing to try to get in touch with ExamSoft, for instance, or, hey, here's what's working for some people, here's what's not. So reach out, try to, connect with some other exam takers in reputable places so that you can help troubleshoot for one another, because unfortunately it's like, obviously we can't do any of that troubleshooting. And I know, unfortunately, ExamSoft and the bar is not helping with the troubleshooting. So, yeah.
It's, we said that the stress testing of ExamSoft was going to be a first look, a bellwether at what might be happening. I think this is a troubling sign. I think the fact that bar examiners continue to make noises about problems with ExamSoft and what they're going to do or not do if they can't pull this exam off is, again, a troubling sign. I still don't know whether or not the October 5th and 6th exams are going to happen. My gut tells me they're not going to happen the way we think they're going to happen. I do believe some jurisdictions are going to have to bail into an open book or an email kind of exam. And I think that these problems with the software that ExamSoft is having, up to and including some legal problems. I mean, the EFF has filed a lawsuit against ExamSoft for privacy violations with the facial recognition. Yeah. There are also challenges that have been made about ExamSoft's affiliate program in law schools, that there may be some ExamSoft customers who are also bar takers and may have conflicts of interest.
Right. Yeah.
There's just a whole range of, from the technical to the moral to the ethical to the legal, that make this just a mess in every direction. And ExamSoft, for those of you that are new to the bar, ExamSoft's been around a long time under a lot of different names, and they've crashed and burned and then resurrected under a new name, and then crashed and burned again and resurrected again and crashed and burned again. This is not a company that has a stellar reputation, frankly, but it's the only game in town. So here we are. And I think for those of you that are struggling getting your technical questions asked, you should be copying the bar examiners on your requests, but I don't know what good it's going to do. I don't know that the bar examiners have any greater, line of communication with ExamSoft than anyone else does. And it's frustrating. I know it is a priority to get it done. It should not dominate your day, right? You still have studying to do, but you should be working on it consistently. And I think Megan's advice is really good. Get in and do that mock test as soon as you can and get that feedback, and figure out what's working and not working.
All right. So I have a
that's cheery news, isn't it?
I know it's hard. So kind of given all this, we have a student had written in this week saying, I'm thinking that the day of the bar, the system will falter and it'll just sort of blow up. And everyone who is taking the exam will pass or get some provisional acceptance pending X number of hours or community service or attorney supervised program.
Yeah, and I think Angelina Jolie is going to call me and tell me that she wants to make Brad. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
I think the first part, I think the possibility of bar ExamSoft not working is very real, to be sure. But I don't think the result of that, and I think this is one of the reasons we wanted to put this question in, the result is not going to be a flinging open wide of the doors. And that's what scares me, is that in a COVID world where everything has gone wrong, it is nice to fantasize that everything or something would go right. But this is not one of those things that seems likely to happen that way. And so I don't want people thinking even in the back of their minds, much less the front of their minds, that somehow it's all going to fall apart and the examiners are going to just say, whoops, our bad, everybody's in. That's not
going to happen.
No, they had that chance a few months ago. Washington State took it, and they were the only ones that did. So out of 50 jurisdictions, only one went that direction. Everybody else said, we're going to do a test. And as we've heard from Georgia and some other states, if they can't give the test in October, they're just going to shut it down until February. So, there's no real movement here. Florida, for sure, after all their moves and changes and switches, they're either going to go October 13th, I think, or they're going to just say forget it as well. So I think you just need to work under the assumption it'll be on your exam date or not at all.
Yeah, they're not going to let you in even if there's catastrophic failure of the software, they're not going to let everyone in. They will, maybe let no one in for that period.
Yeah, I think that would be their preference.
Yeah, they'd definitely rather let no one in than everyone in. Okay. All right. So this is a good clarifying question. Someone said they just got an email from the California examiners and said, I find it interesting that they say, quote, a 100-question MBE-like multiple choice exam will be administered. MBE-like? I guess the Cal Bar is writing their own multiple choice questions now. Not sure if I like that. So you want to clarify that?
That is absolutely 100% wrong. And I just about had a heart attack when I read it. Look, we want to be really clear about this. California is using the 100 questions written and developed by the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Mm-hmm. Everyone testing on October 5th and 6th is using the 100 questions developed by the NCBE. It will be the same 100 questions in every October jurisdiction. That's what we're calling Plan B. Now, the fact that it's not a full 200 question, full-length MBE means it's not being scaled by the National Conference. It's not being scored by the National Conference. In fact, the National Conference is washing their hands of it as quickly as they can. However, they are the National Conference's questions. The only jurisdiction, I think, that is not using the NCBE questions is Florida. And Florida is using the Florida multiple choice questions.
Which they always do, Florida multiple choice questions.
They always do that.
Right.
So Florida just said, forget the multi-state entirely, as did some other states that went to open book and email exams and so on. Some non-UBE jurisdictions. California's weird because they're not UBE, but they are using the multi-state type questions. And they're called multi-state type because it's not a full multi-state bar exam. The multi-state bar exam, believe it or not, is a trademark term. When we talk about it in our materials, we have to actually put in the trademark. Am I right about that, Megan? Don't we have to trademark it? Yeah. So you can't call it a multi-state exam on October 5th and 6th. It's a multi-state type. I think is what it's got to be called. So don't let that distinction dissuade or confuse you. These are multi-state types of questions written by the NCBE. It is not written by the Cal Bar examiners. So
it's the same multiple choice questions that every single person taking the October 5th and 6th online test will have. So, which is just the same for California. If California had given, in 2019, California applicants took the exact same multiple choice questions as, people in Massachusetts did. It's just that the rest of the California exam is not written by the NCBE, but that piece has always been written by the NCBE. It's still written by the NCBE. It's just that no one is taking the 200 on October 5th and 6th. No one's taking the 200 question MBE exam.
Yeah, the next time a 200 question MBE exam will be offered will be February of 2021 as things currently stand right now.
Right.
September 30th, there's a handful of jurisdictions that will take the MBE, and those are in-person exams. They're not online.
Right. Basically, as of right now, the NCBE is not willing to put their MBE online. So this is what they gave instead. Okay, so there's a student who is planning on taking a UBE jurisdiction on October 5th and 6th, and then the Florida exam a week later, and wants to know, what should I do study-wise in the week between the two exams?
All right, well, let me start with this as a disclaimer. And Megan, you and I have talked about this. We don't think Florida's going to let you do that. But if you've cleared it with both jurisdictions, not just one, but with both, okay, good on you. So I want to be very clear that we are not suggesting, recommending, and we think, in fact, this is not permissible. But we've seen stranger things this year, so maybe it is. If you are somehow managing to take the October 5th and 6th Plan B in a jurisdiction, and then you are planning to take the Florida test, which has now been moved back to October 13th, I think you start with the fact that 2 bar exams within 7 days is the equivalent of running the marathon, twice in 7 days. It is going to be brutally difficult. I have very low probability feeling for that, though we've never seen anyone do it. I mean, in the old days, we used to have joint exams where you did one day of the three, like New York, New Jersey, but that was a little different because the multi-state wrapped in the middle of it. In this situation, I think you decide which jurisdiction is most important to you, and you prepare for that jurisdiction primarily. If that is your Plan B jurisdiction, then you should be working on the multi-state essay exams and the performance tests, and a high emphasis on that. And you've got to work on the multi-state type questions, as we just discussed. Then you switch to Florida, which is wildly different length essays, no performance test, and Florida multiple choice. I think in that 1 week, all you can do is focus on Florida differences, and particularly the Florida multiple choice. But I think it will be a very hard pivot from the UBE to Florida. I do not recommend it. This was not a strategy that I would have ever suggested to somebody. And what scares me about it, and I don't think it's just this one student, I think there are probably a fair number of people that are trying to it's like going to the casino at the roulette table, I suppose, and you try to put a chip on every color and nearly every number on the table. Well, at some point, I mean, you might win, but the odds are you're going to overall lose because you got too many chips out on the table. I think you're spread too thin to do it this way. And my ultimate advice is drop one of those tests, whichever one you don't really care about, and sit for the one that you really do care about. You know, the Plan B has got some reciprocity depending on the state you're in. Florida has no reciprocity. But on the other hand, Florida is only a one-day exam. So I think you just got to decide. But I don't know, do you see a good way to maneuver between those two tests?
No, I mean, I absolutely would say drop one. Like, hands down, there's no world in which I think I mean, the gambling metaphor is apt, I think, because it's like the house always wins. Like, you are trying to play the odds or game the system here and think, oh, well, this is perfect. I'll just, knock 2 different bar exams out in 1 week and that'll be great. And I double my chances of getting a passing score. I don't think you do double your chances. I think you have your chance of each. You have, cut your chances in half for each exam. I would be shocked if anyone did that and passed either exam, let alone both of them. Maybe you could pass the first one if you really had spent a lot of time studying, but Florida and the UBE are so different. Florida's not even doing MBE-like questions. They're doing Florida multiple choice questions. So you're studying, the amount of material that you have to study is almost doubled. I mean, there's so little crossover. It's almost doubled. And then you have to pivot, and even within the exam, to trust yourself that you're going to remember, wait, which state is it that has this rule and which one has that? If you find yourself on the Massachusetts bar talking about homestead exemptions, right? Like, it's just, but it's so easy that kind of a thing could happen, and you're going to be so exhausted. I mean, it is. It's like if you signed up, if you ran the New York Marathon on a Saturday and then you turned around the next Saturday and ran the Boston Marathon. Like, there's a reason they don't give them close together, because that's unhealthy and it's not good for anybody, for people to try and push themselves out. So,
and I want to go to the bigger question, which is that I think you and I both are seeing just enormous anxiety and enormous stress and panic. And this is I'm guessing the people that are trying these approaches are so scared that they're reaching for any solution, any fix, anything that they think will work. And I applaud the desire enormously. I applaud the willingness to get in there and take a hit. But this is not the right way. You should be purposeful and intentional and calm. And this is the opposite of that. And I want to really be explicit for all of you who are listening and watching, whether you're in our course or you're on the podcast. This kind of behavior is ultimately self-destructive. And I understand it. I'm not shaming. I'm not condemning. It breaks my heart, because I know that it's coming from a place of fear, and fear is not the place to be. I think so much of what's being driven right now is emotional, not practical, not reasonable. I think anybody, if we describe this scenario, would say, wow, that's kind of crazy. I mean, that's taking on 2 bar exams in 7 days, wildly different. Are you kidding? Nobody's ever done that. I mean, in the history of the modern bar exam, no one's done that. It's never been possible to do. There's a reason for it. It's not good studying. It's not good test taking. It's not good anything. I just want to, as we wrap up to everybody, and I'm so glad, appreciate all of you being here today. And I just want to say to all of you, keep your perspective, keep your cool, keep your focus. I know this is incredibly hard, and I know that we're asking a lot of everybody right now, but this is what the practice of law in many ways is about, is keeping your cool when everybody else around you is losing theirs. And the best attorneys are the ones that are able to keep focused when chaos is going on around them. And the best applicants and the best bar takers will be the ones that stay focused and don't let the distraction and the noise get to them. Some of the noise is just noise. Some of it is more significant, like the ExamSoft stuff. But nonetheless, you can only control the things you can control. If you're a fan of sports, you know that coaches all the time say we control what we can control, right? And we can't do anything about the other things that are beyond our control. I think that's a big lesson to take away from all of this. I hope everybody has a good study week. I know that there is an extraordinary amount going on. It is not going to lessen between now and middle of October, in my view. So this is our new normal. You're going to have to lock into it. If you're taking the exam in 2021, you're going to go through an entire cycle here and then everything else going on in the world. And it's going to stay this way for a long time, I think. And so you just need to set yourself for that possibility. And if you can do that and keep your focus and keep your calm and keep your perspective, you're going to be way better off than most people that are out there. Anything you want to add before we?
Just take care of yourselves this week. Do something, get outside if it's safe, if you're not on the West Coast and the air quality is okay. Stay safe with the fires and the, bad air and everything, everybody in, especially Pacific Northwest people. So yeah, just, do what you can to keep your sanity in this crazy time. And we're here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great week. We will be back to you again next week. And stay safe out there and keep studying. We'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you found this information valuable. We're glad to have you with us this week. And before we sign off, I just want to remind you again about our special free training webinar. It's coming up on Sunday evening. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to learn why we think now is the best time to take the bar exam. We'll be doing a live Q&A at the end of that session. And to register, all you've got to do is go to celebrationbarreview.com/now or click on the registration link here in the show notes. All right, everybody, stay safe, be well, have a great study week, and we will see you next week along our continuing and prolonged Extra Mile. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.